Let's see. Brendon Kraham is a Google mobile veteran, going all the way back to the AdMob days.
Correct.
It's amazing now you can even have such a thing as a Google mobile veteran, because I'm so old that I remember when mobile was...
The year of
I actually
mobile.
had like one of those big things and
That's
all
right.
that. But anyway, you guys had some news. Instant apps came out of the I/O. Tell us a little bit, unpack what instant apps mean for the mobile
Yeah, sure.
environment.
So at Google I/O about a month and a half ago, we launched and announced Android Instant Apps, which is certainly an evolution of the app ecosystem for us on the Play Store. As we think about mobile, and I think we'll talk about this a little bit more, of just in general, our philosophy, our view is that mobile is growing in aggregate, and that is both on the web and on the app side. And as you think about, or at least the way I generally frame or think about the situation is that historically there's very, very low friction from a web environment where you just click on a link and you can get to a destination as easily as possible. But then historically...
If you have good connectivity.
What's that? Yes, if you have connectivity. But then the challenge has been, what is the quality, or can you do as much from a user experience perspective on a mobile site? And then if you juxtapose that from an app environment, a native app environment, is that generally you can build incredibly rich experiences, but there's been more friction. Again, as some of the discussion has come about over the course of the morning, of driving installs is almost akin or a la saying, I drove a lot of clicks to my website. And so we're starting to see both the mobile web merge and develop more app-like functionality, and we're seeing that native applications can actually do more to actually de-frictionalize the experience. And so an instant app, all it is that it's a little piece of the app that will automatically be fetched when you click on a link, and it instantly loads.
So we've got websites, native apps, instant apps. We'll go later to talk about bots and various other. A lot of people here, I think, are developers and marketers that are having to build all these different things. How do you? People are going to go like, ah.
So generally there are three platforms that you build for. You either build for iOS, a native environment. You either build for Android from a native perspective, or you build for the mobile web. And really, ultimately, I think Google's been talking about this for the last 5+ years, is that it's an and strategy, not an or. There are certainly edge cases where you may exclusively build an app. If you're a game developer, you're probably going to be investing in apps. But if you're, let's say, a travel or a retail company, you may want both. That for the non-loyal customer that is just coming in to maybe book a flight or order some flowers or something of that nature, I don't necessarily want to download the app to get to that experience, unless it's more for loyalty and retention. So, and again, I always use it, and it's a terrible example, but if I were perpetually in the doghouse with my wife, then I might have the 1-800-Flowers app on my phone because I always have to buy flowers. If I just buy flowers once a year for Mother's Day, then I'm probably going to go to a mobile web.
Are you talking about like a kind of a funnel where you have kind of casual instant app users or bot users, and then you're trying to get them to install the app? Is that the...
I think it's more about what is the business goal and objective that you're trying to accomplish, what is the type of user you're trying to reach, and then you will decide what to build. I think generally, again, it depends vertical by vertical. If you're talking about Uber or Lyft, you're going to have an app. I don't think you're going to be building a progressive web app. If you're building a game...
or it's in a messaging, it's a bot now.
Correct. They can exist in different places. And so ultimately, our recommendation, our perspective is, again, that mobile is growing. We've got tool and development kits for both situations. Okay. Depending on the business and what you're trying to accomplish and what you know about your user base, build for either and or both.
Now, Firestream is your big...
Firebase.
Firebase, sorry.
Yes.
Is that partly an attempt to kind of make it easier for people to do all these different things, or unpack Firebase?
So Firebase was a little bit of the history on the name is we acquired a company roughly 2 years ago called Firebase, kind of a singular product that they offered, and that was a back-end service. So it really helped for developing apps. And so we bought that company about 2 years ago. One of the problems that we realized is that we made it really hard for developers to actually use all of the different products that we have at Google. We have a variety of SDKs from AdMob to Firebase to really a bunch of different products that a developer may want to use, but we made it really hard because you would have to implement multiple SDKs. The documentation was all over the place. And so we felt we could do a better job. And so since Firebase had a really good, loyal developer following, it has about 450,000 developers at the time that were using their product, that we could actually leverage that brand and leverage their approach and basically say, let's bring in the best of Google.
Is Firebase for everybody, or is it a small developer I mean, what's the...
I do view it for everybody. So Firebase is, one SDK, works across iOS and Android, and coming soon will be more web-based functionality for web apps.
And can it do all the different, can it do an instant app? Do you have to...
Not yet. That's not part of how that works. But then Firebase, to your question of who is it for, there are 15 different products or APIs in Firebase, from things that help you build an app to how do you grow your audience and how do you make money. So things like hosting that I talked about would be a development feature. How do you grow would be maybe something like AdWords that allows you to actually go find more users. And then Earn would be AdMob. At the core of Firebase is analytics. So we launched Firebase Analytics that actually is both in-app analytics and then also kind of buy-side media attribution. And it's all packaged in there. And so to answer your specific question of who is it geared for, certainly we are seeing smaller developers that may want to use the whole portfolio of products because it's one simple and easy implementation. And they're seeing larger, more sophisticated ones that are actually doing side-by-side comparison, let's say, of particular features and maybe only using Firebase for one particular product area.
One of Peter's lines that caught me from his keynote this morning, he mentioned that the web is creeping back. Is that something you guys see? Would you agree with that statement?
Fundamentally, and it gets back to, I think, the nuance between kind of the web and the app world of mobile is growing in aggregate. When we look at mobile web, there's a public stat that we've shared. 50% of our queries in the U.S. are now coming from mobile. So we know that mobile and just
These
general...
are Google search queries.
Google search queries, and that's across web and app. And then on the app side, there's been about 65 billion installs. So there's both healthy businesses on both sides. And what Instant Apps does is, again, make an app experience, make a little bit more web-like. And then we've also introduced something called Progressive Web Apps, which is just HTML5 technology, but that allows for a little bit more app-like functionality. And so push notifications, offline access, the ability to use them in kind of a flaky network connection, things that historically only an app could do that now the browser is capable of doing.
Now, your colleagues on the search side of things probably are happy to hear that something's come along to push people, to give people another option besides the rabbit hole of an app that they can't look at.
Yeah. I mean, look, I think Google does view the world in both lenses. We have very big, viable, substantial businesses and products in both the web space and in the app space. Ecosystem-wise, I think it's fascinating to see what Apple will do. Will they do something like Instant Apps? They certainly care a lot about the app environment. You look at companies like a Facebook, let's say, certainly care a lot about the app environment. And so there's really a broad ecosystem that it's hard to say, and you brought up chat apps as a potential source of, distribution, as a potential source of entry into trying to find information. So, it's unclear exactly how this plays out, several years from now. It may be all of them, it may be some of them, and I think we really fundamentally, to bring it back to what we want the customer to be able to do, is reach users on any one of those experiences as best they can.
Now, speaking of chat, Peter mentioned the Line IPO, which is a pretty big deal. You guys have Allo coming, right? Tell us something about Allo.
So at Google I/O, we had a bunch of different announcements: Allo and Dual, Google for Home, which is again, as Sundar said, credit to Amazon for really pushing with the Amazon Echo, and getting that out in the market. And so that's another product that we launched. And so, messaging is something that, that we care a lot about. It is certainly something that we've done historically with Hangouts and things of that nature. And I think the perspective that Sundar has shared is that, we really want to think about how can we reinvent messaging in a new kind of paradigm that is mobile specific. If you go into the history of what we've done with Hangouts, that was built and born primarily for desktop, and then we modified it for mobile. And so Allo in particular is kind of a new product intended to be very, very mobile specific that brings in a lot of new rich functionality. And at the core of the Allo messaging system is something else that we launched called the Google Assistant. And it's really all about helping you accomplish day-to-day tasks and being able to engage with basically the product in a very interesting way.
I mean, one of the most striking things about the chatbot thing, I mean, again, I view it through the lens of somebody that's normally an app user, but now suddenly, oh wow, I have the option of instead of opening the Uber app, just using it on a messaging service and saying, hey, I need an Uber, and having it show up.
That's right.
Which is pretty cool. How do you see that from what's the marketing spin? I mean, does anybody even know how do you market things in a
Yeah,
voice-driven
in
environment?
a voice-driven world, so a couple things. Number one, I would say, again, Peter referencing Line, very successful public offering. The stats that they've shared, it's about a $5, I think, average revenue per user, and so they've done quite well. And the way the distribution of their monetization actually breaks down, if you look at their filings, is 35% of it comes from ads. Roughly 35% of it comes from content, so that could be gaming and installs, and the rest of it tends to come from stickers and things of that nature, kind of more of the virtual good. And so that's an example where, again, a messaging platform has been successful from a monetization perspective and has a variety of things in there. And if you look at the others like WeChat and Kakao and all of those, they do a lot of commerce, they do a lot of different things.
That's a kind of a similar mix to some apps, games apps. I mean, that mix isn't unfamiliar.
Advertising or
would
in-app
not be
purchase.
unfamiliar
That's
to
right.
people in the app world. I mean, are those going to converge, do you think?
Is what going to converge?
The chat bot, we'll call it for lack of a better thing, and apps.
I mean, I would say, the things that I mentioned, at least the way Line is making their money is kind of, I think, things that are well known, like e-commerce and gaming and stickers, which may be a little bit new for some organizations. But chatbot, again, it's unclear exactly how that's going to manifest. I think when we launched Allo,
Allo came with like Open Table, I think, announced as a.
So basically for Allo and for Google Home, the message is that we've really been thinking about how do we best surface business information or have businesses engage in that environment. I think like a lot of products that actually we launch, it's build the consumer experience and then figure out how you do the monetization. I think as an example, maybe a little bit of a proxy, we were talking about this backstage, is that in mapping, today you can actually go into Google Maps and there's Uber capabilities where you can actually book from within the map. I think that is a decent example of how monetization can manifest, and that's what we're seeing with a lot of the messaging companies that are out there.
AI is a big part of that, and everyone's buzzing about AI now. Tell us a little bit about Universal App Campaigns, which I think has an AI component in there.
Yeah, for sure. So Universal App Campaigns is a product we launched about a year ago at this point now. And if I were to take a step back and say, actually, for what Google's been doing on the ad side for app discovery and engagement, is that I truly believe we've come a long way in the last year or so, where we've spent a lot of time focusing on how do we drive increased volume for developers, how do we make it dead easy to work with us, and then ultimately, how do we drive good long-term value? And so on the former, we've done a lot of work, again, historically. Go ahead.
Let me ask you a dumb question. What makes it universal?
So universal, and I'll get to that,
Okay.
is that when you think about what we've done, we now have ad inventory that we've exposed on YouTube. Okay. So you basically can do app install on the YouTube platform or product. We have app install capabilities on AdMob, and we also have app install capabilities on search, both on the Play Store and Google.com. One of the pieces of feedback that we hear from customers sometimes is that we make it challenging because of the complexity therein. And so we wanted to make it really, really easy for a customer to buy. And so Universal App Campaigns is the ability to essentially come in and say, I'm willing to bid a certain amount. Here is the app that I want to promote, and we automatically...
Is iOS in there as well, I think?
Android and iOS. Okay. And we automatically will run your ads across all of those platforms and find the right user. And as you ask about...
I pay you for this, right?
What's that? You, of course, pay for those. Okay. But that is the machine, as you asked about kind of AI or machine learning, that the product that we have actually does that for you and is in real time.
How granular is the AI gives you the granularity in terms of users? Is that why you?
It's basically
why do you need AI?
Impression by impression. Basically, should I buy or should I serve an ad for this particular advertiser? And so the machine is, we think, very capable and adept at doing that. Managing that level of complexity to say impression here, impression there, do I want that one, do I not want that one, is very hard to manage by just turning knobs and dials in the AdWords interface. So when you use the technology to do it, it frees up, I think, a lot of the hard work to say, let me find the right users. And really, ultimately, what we think is that when you free up some time there, is that you can focus more on the strategic things like how do I maximize conversion? What are the insights that I can get from my third-party analytics provider or a Firebase to actually think about what is my true ROI or LTV and help me build a business?
Since you brought up ROI, I'm suspicious when everything is AI now. I mean, you can't.
It is a buzzword for sure.
Is there actual empirical evidence that these new AI-driven tools, like the one you just described, actually do improve over whatever it was before we had, I don't know what,
Yeah,
the
totally.
normal.
And so I would say yes. In addition to universal app campaigns, broadly outside of the app ecosystem, we have a lot of other products in AdWords that are basically machine-based, where it's, and I don't need to name them all.
Machine learning-based.
Machine learning-based. And really what we see, and we have reams of case studies that we've actually produced where marketers, again, I think there's a great example from HBO who basically said, where it used to take me 2 hours to set up and run and manage a campaign with Google, I've limited down to 15 minutes, and I'm actually seeing better performance than I was basically managing that stuff. And I think, again, there's probably other people that disagree here, but when you allow for all of those, again, impression by impression buying capabilities, that there is a benefit to the machine to be able to do that. That would require a lot of man hours to be able to do that effectively.
Now, I mean, let me ask you a sort of a big question. Google, you guys have a ton of data, and so machine learning really needs data. You can't have machine learning without, and in fact, the more data you have, the faster and better your machine learns.
Yep.
Facebook has got a ton of data, and this is all kind of first-party data because it's in your system. Are we headed toward a world where you guys are going to put together your suite of products for app developers or whatever, and Facebook's going to have theirs, and Apple's going to have theirs, and it's going to be kind of the war of the worlds? Is that the world we're headed toward?
I don't think it's a war of the worlds. I mean, right, it's a competitive space out there. There is certainly data that
but more that they're worlds, that everybody's got the whole stack.
So, and I think there are different elements to that. And again, I think, there's a term that gets thrown around of kind of the, walled garden. Snapchat certainly has, a very rich ecosystem, and, Amazon has a rich ecosystem, and Apple has a rich ecosystem. So there are a lot of big players, right, that have, I think, robust user bases and data that can fuel, I think, long-term, positive results for customers ultimately. For us, at least from an advertising standpoint, there are two prongs to our strategy. One is actually heavy engagement and partnership with customers and third parties. So customers like Tune and others that are in the space are very, very big partners of ours. And the data and the customer data that they have are important and critical for us to build the right products. At the same time, we do have some data, let's say with Android, where we have really rich data that we can use. And so when you marry those two things...
And only you can use, because you guys are the only ones that have it.
And I think that's a reality of, and again, strategic discussions that happen at all of these organizations is, how do we use or what do we do with that data? And there's a difference between some of the stuff we do with AdWords, whereas call it Firebase or Firebase Analytics, where that data is the customer's data. That is there, and they own that. And it's their discretion to share or not share. And so I think, generally, yes, there are a lot of walled gardens that have a lot of rich data, but I think it ends up in all customers, whether you look at Facebook and things that they do, they use proprietary data, and they also ask customers for data to say, let me go help you find more users that look or feel like, a given, high-quality user in your, for your business.
Now, I spend most of my time in the media world where there's been a lot of buzz, for instance, about Facebook's news feed. Oh, wow, every publisher in the world wants to get into Facebook or Snapchat.
Yeah.
And then, oops, somebody wakes up one morning and decides, we're going to switch the algorithm a little bit, and my traffic drops 30 or 40%. What can you say? I mean, what assurances can you give people who go all in on the Google platform that that's not going to happen to them someday?
I would say 17 years of history of running, I think, what is a very partner and advertiser friendly business. Okay. Again, we make tweaks to the algorithm, which is, I think, if we were not to, it'd be a foolish business to be in, where you expect that the algorithm and the product that we deliver 15 years ago should be the same one today. And so there'll be nuance to that, and there are certainly, there's some fluidity perhaps in traffic that certain partners get, but we try and be very, clear and open. I think Google tends to have a very open policy as it relates to kind of the, from a...
Plus advertising, people do pay you guys a lot.
They do pay, but again, even in organic, right? Like from an organic perspective, all that is, very important for us to maintain a very healthy and open ecosystem and partner with, every type of customer that we can.
We've already talked a little bit about the sort of the voice environment and what might happen. There's some other, like virtual reality is popped up. It's another huge buzz. Does it have any part in this? I mean, when you guys are thinking about this?
So, I would generally say that in video advertising broadly, is a big bet for us at Google, and I think is very powerful at telling rich and immersive stories. We see a lot of times that video leads to very high ROI.
Even on mobile and
On mobile, yeah,
everywhere.
absolutely. Just good, strong engagement. And that's just standard video. And I think then there's basically two other flavors. YouTube has invested significantly in 360-degree video. And then there's the VR piece. Both of them, and I don't know if you've spent any time with 360 video. I encourage you to, if you haven't, go to YouTube and search for 360 videos. I was actually last night, there was a Swiss acrobatic flying plane formation team.
At the Republican convention.
Yeah, at the Republican convention, of course. And you can sit in the cockpit with the pilots, and you really can spend and find yourself immersed in the content, unlike anything where you're just watching kind of a static video. And I think, VR is the next step of that, where it's certainly you are present. It's not just that you're immersed, but you're present in that experience. Both of them, you don't want to be disrupted. From an ad standpoint, I think on 360 video, there's a couple fantastic examples where I think emotion starts to come out. Some not ad related, and again, as a journalist, you've probably seen some of this, of 360 video that talk about like displaced citizens, and you can see in Syria what their environment is like. There are examples where advertisers, AT&T did a fantastic campaign where it was think before you text, and you're driving in the car while somebody is texting, and they eventually get into an accident, and you're engaged in that 360-degree environment. The ad's implication over time is that it is more high production costs to build those experiences to ensure that they're not disruptive than, let's say, building a banner or building a text ad. And so I think we will start to see more and more advertising opportunities on those platforms, but they will be fundamentally different because they require an immersive experience versus just, maybe today how we are introducing ads. Definitely more native, to use a buzzword.
A little more nitty-gritty measurement. Okay,
Measurement.
Lots going on. And, for instance, the AI piece could, in theory, give you all kinds of new insights, different kinds. I mean, do you see something happening there? Is there going to be a big change in how and more particularly what people measure?
Yeah, absolutely. I think omni-channel measurement and all of that, whether it's Google and the Google Analytics 360 suite that we recently launched, other partners in the space that are certainly doing things. Measurement is, I think, a core and key fundamental in a multi-screen environment. We know that users check their phones 150 times a day. They are, all across multiple screens and a variety of touch points. We actually did some longitudinal research recently at looking at users' behavior from a digital standpoint. And even in, let's say, like a month's time, they're interacting with digital tens of thousands of times. And so it's hard for a marketer to make smart and informed decisions and again, Peter talked about it in their new marketing console, I forget what the name of the product is, where, what is the impact of other actions or events or impressions that lead to an outcome, attribution. And so I think products like Google Analytics, that we've launched and others in the space are all geared towards helping marketers be as thoughtful and informed and make sound marketing decisions. I want to read, there's actually a Forrester, and I think somebody from Forrester is speaking tomorrow. As it relates to data, I just want to get the data right. 84%, this is from marketers at organizations, 84% believe that their data sources are not well aligned inside their organization. 60% think marketing measurement tools are difficult to use. And then 57% believe that they are in silos in the organization that prevent access to insights. And if I were to add and read one quote, I apologize, from the Harvard Business Review, they did a bunch of analysis, and it says businesses that integrate multiple sources of customer and marketing data significantly outperform other companies in terms of sales, profits, and margins. And so basically, you need to track, you need to measure. It is a complex world. There are solutions that are out there to help track and measure that. And we think ultimately, whether it's our product or somebody else's product, that we will be a beneficiary of that because a smarter, more informed marketer is going to be good for our business.
Let's go back for a minute to the whole web app thing. Deep links obviously have changed to some extent the relationship between those two things. Do you see that? I mean, are we going to be, you use the word universal, you guys use it in a slightly different context, but I mean, just talking in a mobile world, are we moving to an environment where all those different silos of mobile, app and this are going to somehow disappear?
Again, it depends. I think we will be in an ecosystem environment where there will be, websites, apps, instant apps for some period of time, for a long time. I don't think that's going to go away. I think what we want to do, and we do this already, is be intelligent about where we route the user. And there's a lot of basic understanding that you can do there. If you're searching in Google Search and I click on a link, does that user have the app, yes or no? If they don't have the app, you might not want to drive them to an install, you might want to drive them to the Progressive Web app, or something like that. I think ultimately, we want to get to a point, I think, where when you click on a link, whether you're in Google Search, whether you're in a chat and messaging app, or any different type of experience from a mobile environment, is that we can actually be smart and thoughtful about any of those different form factors or products. Which one do we show? And what we show should be driven by what is the highest likelihood of a positive outcome. Right. Is the engagement that I get on Wired magazine going to be better on a Progressive Web app, right, an accelerated mobile page, or a native app? We should have some data and thoughtfulness about that. The same could be said for, let's call it Booking.com. Right. If I click on a link, take me to the place where I'm going to maximize conversion. And that's ultimately what the customer wants, is to be able to build a profitable business. And all of the, complexity, or what do I build, right, or how do I build, is all about how do I help the customer get the best positive return for the customer coming to their experience. Complexity was
the word on my lips. I mean, here's my question. One man's complexity is another's nightmare, hair-tearing out nightmare.
Yeah.
That, if you have a bazillion options, that scenario you described of, well, what kind of customer is he? We're going to do this or that. All of that takes a tremendous amount of intellectual firepower on the part of a couple of guys who might be sitting in a garage putting something together. Or do you guys think you can actually take the complexity out by presenting them with a tool that will just essentially automate that?
I think we fundamentally will take the complexity out for the consumer experience. Because we don't want to surface all that where it's like, oh, would you like to go to this, or would you like to go to that? Right. Like, that should be seamless, and we already do that today. I do think, again, if you look at the broad macro picture, then yes, there can be a lot of complexity. But again, it does fundamentally come down to, if I'm two guys in a garage building a business, or I am Booking.com or Macy's, what am I trying to accomplish? Am I really trying to do customer acquisition? Am I trying to build a loyalty product? What am I doing? Am I building a game? And I think that will cut through the complexity and very much get you into where you need to be. And ultimately it does. It comes down to, is it an iOS app? Is it a native app on Android? Or is it a website? And sure, there are flavors of what you can do therein, but that's it.
Do you think even those distinctions 5 years from now will have gone away?
You should ask Ray Kurzweil, who's coming later. He seems to be the soothsayer of where things are going.
In Ray world, all problems go away.
That's
You
right.
don't even die, so it's easy.
Yeah.
No, but seriously, I mean, are we going to get to I'm old enough to remember. I remember being lectured that I had to learn how to hand code HTML, because if I didn't know how to do it, I'd be a loser in life.
Yeah.
And other smarter people said, don't worry about it, they'll automate it, and you won't have to ever think about it. I mean, are we going to someday have a world where you can just go and say, I'm going to make an app?
I'm going to make something. I mean, I do think that there probably will. And again, there's been 2 chapters already in this story, that the web is dead and that the web is not dead.
Right.
And I don't know where we go. But I do think from a development standpoint that we will probably get to a place where you are capable or able of building one thing and call that the content that exists. Right. And because there are so many branches of where content can be surfaced, in a chat, in a messaging app, in a voice dialogue, on a wherever, that we will be pulling forward some of that content. I've used the term cardification, and that happens today, where little snippets of context or content get pulled forward from some corpus of data. And that could be a world where we get where it's, again, something that gets surfaced in a variety of different places. But again, I am,
Cool. We're looking at zeros here, so
That's
we've
right.
got to go. But I'm just going to say to everybody, by the way, I hope you all know that this building we're in is was named by a guy named Craig McCaw for his mother. Craig McCaw is the god of wireless. I mean, we wouldn't be here if it weren't for Craig McCaw of Seattle. So I'm honored to be in what I would consider spiritual home of the mobile world. And thanks to Tune for letting us be here, and thank you, Brendon. So let's go.
Thank you.
Okay.